The Lost Boys of Glenroy, Australia's Forgotten Children. Tonight on Midnight Narratives, we're stepping into the shadows of suburbia, peeling back the quiet streets and fences of 1960s Melbourne to uncover a story that time tried to forget. Before the headlines of Ivan Milat and the Snowtown murders, before Australia even had a proper word for serial killer, there was Glenroy. Two boys vanished, a community panicked, and behind closed doors, something much darker stirred. This is the story of the Lost Boys of Glenroy, a case so disturbing, so quietly buried, it almost never surfaced again. But tonight, you'll hear everything. If you're from Melbourne, especially the northern suburbs, pay close attention. You might know more than you think. And if you've heard whispers of this case before, let us know in the comments. Now, let's begin. In early winter of 1966, the suburb of Glenroy in Melbourne was mostly unremarkable. Rows of brick homes, corner milk bars, and kids playing footy in the street. It was the sort of place where people didn't lock their doors and thought they didn't need to. That illusion cracked on the morning of June 3rd when 9-year-old Peter Gibbons and 10-year-old Thomas Wallace left their homes on bicycles, intending to ride to the Glenroy tip. It was a common enough weekend ritual, scavenge for old bike parts, scrap metal, or anything worth bringing home. They were meant to be back by lunch. They never returned. The police initially suspected they'd run away. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no abandoned bikes. But their parents knew better. These weren't boys who'd just disappear. They'd packed sandwiches. They'd left notes on the fridge. They were excited. By nightfall, a full-scale search had begun. Locals combed the tips, the creek beds, the paddocks behind the railway yards. Police dogs were brought in, helicopters scanned the brush, but after 3 days, not a single trace was found, until the letter arrived. It was crudely written, the grammar childish, but the message clear. We took the boys. They saw something they shouldn't. They'll stay with us forever. At first, detectives dismissed it as a cruel prank, but the tone was too specific. It referenced the tip, it referenced a location no one but someone involved or watching would know. And it was signed MD. That signature would haunt investigators for decades. There was a man living just 2 blocks from the Wallace family, a recluse named Morris Darnell, or Mad Morris as kids called him. He was in his late 40s, drove an old grey van and had a habit of walking the streets at night. People whispered he collected bones, some said he used to be a taxidermist, others swore they'd seen children go into his house and never come out. Police questioned him early in the investigation, but Morris had an alibi. Shaky, but enough. He'd been at the Coburg RSL club drinking. A bartender confirmed he'd been there at 1:30 p.m., which was after the boys were last seen. That was enough to cross him off the list. At least officially. Unofficially, one of the senior officers on the case, Detective Russell Bodine, kept Morris in his notes. Bodine was a methodical man. He kept handwritten files on suspects long after cases closed. After his retirement, he gave a rare interview to an obscure crime journal in 1982. In it, he said, "We had eyes on Darnell for months. He knew too much. His dog sniffed the tip like it knew something. We just didn't have proof. But I'd bet my pension on it." The house on Lytle Street. In 1974, nearly 8 years after the boys disappeared, council workers were assigned to demolish the long-abandoned Darnell property. Morris had vanished in 1971, leaving behind a locked house full of strange objects, dolls with missing limbs, plaster mannequins, jars of teeth. The workers joked nervously but continued with the job, until one man broke through a floorboard and found a crawl space filled with bones. At first they assumed animal remains, but as more workers gathered and police were called, it became clear these weren't from dogs or cats. Under the old floorboards in shallow dirt graves were the remains of at least 2 children, tiny clothes, a rusted bike bell, and, chillingly, an old sandwich wrapper with a faded date, June 3rd, 1966. It was them, Peter and Thomas. But the nightmare didn't end there. Forensic examination revealed the boys had died not long after their disappearance, possibly within 48 hours. But the real horror came with the discovery of bruising patterns, restraints, and markings that didn't match any known tools. Whatever happened in that house was more than just murder. It was ritualistic, obsessive, planned. The most chilling detail? Etched into the inside of one of the wooden beams, almost invisible without direct light, were the initials, MD. The other children. As the story made its way into local news, though never national headlines, more families came forward. A girl who went missing for 3 hours in 1964, a boy who vanished for a day but was later found wandering, unable to remember where he'd been, a neighbor who swore she saw Darnell leading children into his house with costumes and sweets. The police reopened old files. But without Darnell and without more concrete evidence, the case fizzled again. The house was bulldozed, the story faded. Some say the police didn't pursue it too hard because of the optics. Others believe a deeper cover-up was at play, that Darnell wasn't acting alone. The Dark Legacy. Today there's no plaque, no memorial. The Glenroy tip is long gone. The land where Darnell's house stood is now home to a block of neat townhouses. Most residents have no idea what happened, but strange stories persist. Some homeowners claim their kids have nightmares about being taken under the floor. One boy described a man with no lips and glass eyes trying to sew his mouth shut. Others say they hear tapping in the walls, though no pests are ever found. One resident, a school teacher named Alana, once said in a forum, "My daughter, age 4, told me her imaginary friend was Tommy, and he had a torn shirt and no shoes. When I asked where he lived, she pointed to the floor and whispered, 'He's still hiding.'" Not every ghost wears a sheet. Not every monster lives in the woods. Sometimes they live 2 blocks away behind drawn curtains and locked doors. Sometimes they vanish before we can ask them why. If you've ever lived in Glenroy, if your parents remember the boys who never came home, tell us in the comments. And if you know of a lesser-known mystery from your own town, drop it below. We might feature it next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who sleeps with the lights off. Thanks for watching Midnight Narratives, where every suburb has a secret.